Yesterday, Sayadaw mentioned that mind and body happening continuously is samsara, and within that, the rounds of kilesa, the rounds of deeds, the rounds of results, kilesa, kama, and vipaka. These occur, they go around, and these are strictly suffering. Why do these three rounds go around? Why do they continue to revolve? Isn't there any way out? Is there a way to cut off the revolution of the rounds? For an ordinary person who lacks the practice of satipatthana, there's no way out. And except for the time when one is sleeping, during one's waking hours, one opens one's eyes, pricks up one's ears, takes a whiff, and based on all the senses all the sense doors become the base for kilesas to arise. And due to the round of kilesas, the round of deeds, and therefore the round of results, continue to revolve. So how these rounds continue to revolve and how they are stopped is what Sayadaw will discuss today in terms of theory and practice. If in the moment of seeing we use the method of satipatthana and our practice has energy, we apply energy to know the arising physicality and mentality, the arising truth of suffering. But if we don't observe, then we don't know, and we go the wrong way. So not only do we not know what is really there, we know it wrongly, and based on that, we want it. So there's tanha. And then there's grasping, clinging on to what we see wrongly, and that's upadana. So this is the round of kilesas, and the critical part of that round is ignorance, avijja. If this avijja, ignorance, is not removed, then tanha and upadana will also not be removed. As long as one is living in samsara, if one's mind is not set in a good way, if one has unwise consideration, ayoniso manasikara, then one will commit akusala, wrongdoing. And if, on the other hand, one has a good mindset and has wise consideration, one will perform kusala, good deeds. But these good deeds will contribute to the revolution of the rounds. They'll lead to results, both direct and indirect. So kusala, ordinary kusala leads to that. And as long as the round of kilesa is continuing, other kilesas will also arise. And based on those, actions will continue and results will also arise. So it's as kilesas undestroyed, action continues, thus results arise. And this is how we go in the world. In the moment of seeing, one observes with the practice of satipatthana. If one doesn't observe with the practice of satipatthana, if one doesn't note at the moment of arising, then one won't know physicality and mentality, nama and rupa. One won't know cause and effect. One will not know. One won't know the true nature of things, and one won't know how they manifest as being impermanent and suffering and without an inherent self. We won't know these things. What will appear to us is form and person. And if we see something we like, then greed will arise. And if we see something dislikable, dosa, anger, will arise. If we know, then we have correct view, samadhi, wisdom. But in this case, because we didn't observe at the moment of rising, instead we have miccha ditthi, wrong knowing. The mind doesn't connect with the object as it arises. Because the mind slips off the object, the mind goes to sense pleasures, wanting good sights, good sounds, good tastes, good touches, good smells. Or it goes to wanting to harm others, wanting to destroy others, or jealousy. But for the most part, because we live in a world of the senses, our minds dwell on the sense pleasures. And this is called miccha vitakka. So instead of having samavitaka, right aiming, we have wrong aiming. And because of this, although we have samadhi in a way, the mind is collected in a way, it's not falling on the object. So what we have is wrong concentration, miccha samadhi. And the mind is not connecting with the presently arising object, so there's no sustained sati. So the forces that are activated when we do satipatthana practice, starting with effort, these forces are missing. So when effort is not present, laziness enters in. Or else, there's wrong effort. We make effort in the wrong way, meccha vayama, leading to meccha sati, meccha samadhi. Wrong attention, wrong concentration. So there's no correct samadhi khandha arising because we missed to note the arising object. So, and because there's no samadhi khandha, there's no right view. There's no knowledge that can arise because samadhi is not there. So when there's no sila, if we don't keep sila, then instead of right speech, right action, right livelihood, we'll be committing wrong speech, meccha vacha, wrong action, meccha kamanta, and wrong livelihood, meccha ajiva. So in this way, we'll be devoid of the three trainings. They'll be lacking from our being. And due to transgressive acts, our behaviors are not clean, they're gross. And as we commit wrong deeds, we go along the wrong path. Because there's no right concentration, there's meccha samadhi, wrong concentration, focusing ourselves on the wrong thing. And because there's no right effort, laziness comes in. And because there's no effort and concentration, there's no mindfulness. So the mindfulness is not there to protect our minds. The mind misses the object, the presently arising object, and therefore ignorance. In place of knowledge we have ignorance, not knowing and knowing in the wrong way. Therefore the seeds of the kilesas are not removed. One misses the peace and tranquility that one can get through the practice. And because there's no sila, then our physical and verbal behaviors become base. Without samadhi, there's no control of the mind. And without wisdom, the latent kilesas are unremoved. They're still in our being. So through one's through one's transgressive acts, one loses one's reputation and one's humanity. One has no virtue and one becomes base, low grade, and low level. So why does this happen? It happens because we don't know the presently arising object, and due to that, avijja and all the other kilesas arise. In what kind of person do the kilesas arise, as Sayadaw just described above? In what kind of person becomes base through this lack of the three trainings? Well, it happens in one who doesn't know the practice of satipatthana, or in one who knows the practice but doesn't apply it, or also in one who practices but not carefully. So when in any of those situations, for any of those persons, the round of kilesas will always be revolving. And when we miss the arising object, we fail to note the arising object, ignorance comes in. And with every object there's another layer of ignorance. So layers of moha are accumulating every time we miss an object. And with not being able to control one's physical and verbal behaviors, one's behaviors lose their culture, their humanity. So that's the loss of the sila seka. And then when there's no samadhi, one's mind is filled with all sorts of impurities, wanting to kill, wanting to steal, wanting to hurt, wanting sense pleasures, wanting to take drugs. So the mind is filled with these things, and the mind is not clean. And therefore, because it's not clean, it's very wild. So it's not lovable, it's not pleasant, it's not something delightful. And without knowledge, the seeds of kilesas can't be destroyed. So if we lose the three trainings of sila, samadhi, and panya, then how can we be Arya? How can we be clean, pure, and noble? If the Noble Eightfold Path is not developed through our practice, then there won't be any purity, and there won't be any excellence. So we'll go the wrong path, and because of that, the three rounds will continue to revolve, and they will lead to more suffering. And the right path to the end of suffering is closed, Samadukakiyagami. Why is it? Because we don't develop the Eightfold Path enough. We don't establish the Eightfold Path. We don't develop it, and we don't enlarge it, make it grow. Therefore, the round of kilesa is always revolving, except for when we're asleep. Well, every time we see, hear, during our waking hours, we're seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. All day long, there are experiences that we have, and these are the grounds for kilesas. So, as Sayadaw said, not practicing the Eightfold Path, the rounds continue to revolve. So because it goes around, it's called a round. And also the word pavatana. It doesn't just go around. It flows like a stream continuously. And the revolving of the rounds is not good. It's bad. It's the cause of suffering, and it's just continuing to go around and around. So if we say that the round of kilesas arise, continue to arise because we fail to note, in one noting the round of kilesas revolves, because of failing to note, it follows that if we note the arising object on time, then the round of kilesas will stop then and there. So how does it stop? When a visible object arises and we note it on time, we note it right at the moment it arises, then what's apparent is just the eye base, the receptive element, and the visible object which strikes it, and the seeing consciousness. The seeing consciousness depends on the eye. However, without a visible object, there won't be any seeing to occur. For seeing consciousness to arise, there must be an eye that's healthy, and there also must be a visible object. And the result of these two striking is, the result of the form striking the eye is seeing. So seeing is just result, and it's an indirect result. So it's neither kusala nor kusala. It's called in Pali abhyagata. So, and together with seeing consciousness, there's the seeing contact, and also the seeing feeling, phassa and vedana. And these also are neither kusala nor akusala. So in this moment of seeing, there's not kusala or kusala happening. In that moment that we note seeing, kusala or kusala has not happened. They're just resultant. The eye is physicality and form is physicality, and these are resultant phenomena. And so is the seeing consciousness. So there's no kusala or akusala involved in the moment of seeing. But if we don't note it on time, thoughts arise based on what we saw. So, and at that moment, avijja is present because we don't know what really happened in the moment of seeing. We don't know the physicality and the mentality. We don't know the eye base, the form, or the seeing consciousness. When we note right at the moment of seeing, when we note seeing right at the moment of seeing, between that moment of seeing and any potential akusala, the satipatthana is inserted. So therefore akusala doesn't happen. So what we perceive truly is the truth of suffering, and we see also that there's no self, inherent self. There's no jiva atta involved in this meeting of the eye, the form, and the seeing consciousness. And the seeing also doesn't happen due to a divine creator, Parama Atta or Mahabrahma. It's just true nature. And this is knowledge. This is knowledge, and in that moment there's no akusala, and also there's no ordinary kusala. What is there is bhavana kusala. This is kusala. It's not based on the round of kilesas. It's based on knowing, and it doesn't result in new life. It leads to liberation from life. When we know seeing at the moment of seeing, at the very moment, what we experience are just indeterminate phenomenon. Right? Neither kusala nor kusala. There's no kusala or kusala involved. And when we don't know, or know wrongly, when we don't know it on time, we don't know, or we know wrongly, so the kilesa sap, the sap of the kilesas flows. But because of noting the arising object right at the moment it arises, we come to know physicality and mentality, nama and rupa, and we come to know cause and effect. We come to know the characteristics, the individual characteristics of phenomena, its impermanent individual characteristics, and also the common characteristics of phenomena. And this knowing is samadeti, right view. So due to the mind falling collectedly on the arising object, there's samadhi, and this samadhi is correct samadhi, sama samadhi. And we make the effort to note the object on time, that's samavayama, right effort. And the mind comes face to face with the object. That's sama sankappa. So the mind falling firmly, collectedly on the object is sama samadhi. And for this we need active effort called atapa. And this is samavayama also. So the samadhi kanda, the three parts, samavayama, samasati, being face to face with the object, and sama samadhi, falling collectedly on the object. The three parts of the samadhi kanda are present, and therefore we're free of the kilesa sap that's due to pariyotana kilesas. And with aiming, we have sama sankappa, and with knowledge we have samadeti. And with this, the wisdom part of the group is of the Eightfold Path is present, and the seeds of kilesas, the latent kilesas, are uprooted. So when we are noting the arising object, then we have the sila kanda, which we have through restraining our senses, and also through our commitment not to break sila should the opportunity to arise. Samadhi, the samadhi kanda and the panya kanda is also present. So the three parts of the Noble Eightfold Path are present in a moment of noting. So there's an example of the tree. If the sap of a tree dries up, then it won't bear fruit. So only if it can, only if it has sap flowing in it will it bear fruit and therefore have seeds that will give rise to more trees. But if it doesn't have sap, then it won't bear fruit and there won't be any seeds. So there won't be any more new trees. And it's similarly with the rounds of kilesas, deeds and results. In a moment of practice, in place of the round of kilesas, we have sila, samadhi, and panya, the three trainings arising. So when the Eightfold Path is established and developed, then the three rounds stop. And this is very evident in our practice. Right now, when the yogis are practicing, they're developing the Eightfold Path. We're all working to cut the round of kilesas by noting every single second, by noting every arising object. So there's effort to note the arising object every second of the time. And following on effort, there's mindfulness and also concentration, the mind falling on the object. And there's aim, right aim, and knowledge. due to the preceding factors. So every moment of knowing, these 5 factors are present. And sometimes, if we're not aiming directly at the object, then the samadhi khandha doesn't arise. But for the most part, when we're trying to note every second, this is what happens. So due to the practice, we are drying up the sap of the kilesas, and therefore this the Noble Eightfold Path is called Arya, pure and clean and excellent. So every time an object arises, we note it. We don't give kilesas a chance to arise. Therefore, actions don't have a chance to arise, and results also don't have a chance to arise. And this is called Samadukhakyagami. This is when we practice systematically, one develops the Eightfold Path and stops the 3 rounds. So Samadukhakyagami, these words describe the attributes of the Noble Eightfold Path. As mentioned, if with every seeing we note seeing as it arises, the Eightfold Path is present, and therefore all 3 grades of kilesa sap, the gross, the medium, and refined kilesa sap, is being dried up. And not only is the kilesa sap being dried up on 3 levels, but also, because of that, seeds do not develop, and therefore there are no new trees, no new rounds. So every moment of noting, we get benefit. We get the benefit of our mind being collected, calm, falling on the object, gaining knowledge. Our behaviors are clean. And these are all benefits that we gain in one moment of noting. If we note every second, so that we get these benefits every second, then the preliminary path, the forerunner path, develops, leading to the noble path. Vipassana knowledge develops gradually in stages and weakens the kilesas. And with the rising of path knowledge, the kilesas are uprooted permanently. So at that time, we gain avedita sukha. So Sayadaw will continue this tomorrow night.